Frank Corrado is a former Vancouver Canuck. He is, of course, a TSN hockey analyst, and he joins us on Wednesdays. Frank, how are you?
I'm just pointing out the Vancouver Canucks helmet.
Oh,
There
yes,
it is.
There it is. We put it on the top shelf today just for this hit.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Your first and only forever a Canuck, Frank Corrado.
That's right.
And we understand Rick Tocchet and his comments about going defense by committee, and everybody better get used to playing with everybody because that's the way it's going to be. This is registering in Toronto. You're being asked about this.
You might be a part of it. You might be a part of the committee, or who knows?
That's how irregular it is.
I needed this a long time ago, because if I knew I was going to get an opportunity to play with Edler, play with Ham, who knows? Who knows what could have been, right? Yeah. It's interesting. For me, a lot of this stems from the fact that they still don't have a bona fide number two top pair defenseman to play with Quinn Hughes. And if you don't have that, then the conversation turns into, well, I guess we got to do it by committee. And I was high on put Filip Hronek with Quinn Hughes, let that be the top pairing, and see if you can figure out the rest from there. But as time has gone on here, and now they've made some changes to the blue line, I'm more on board with Hronek playing on the second pair, because if he's not on the second pair, I don't know if there's enough puck moving ability. So I feel like it would just all be hoarded on the top pair, and there's not enough to go around. But if you had a bona fide top pair partner to play with Quinn Hughes, this wouldn't be a conversation. And the last time he had a real partner that was his partner staple to him was Chris Tanev. And he's gone, and he went for free, and he never should have left. So now what you have is this rotating cast of characters. Some have worked pretty good, like Luke Schenn at times worked pretty good for that pair. Tyler Myers hasn't worked well on that pair. And now you're at the point where it's one of those things for a player. If I'm doing well with a partner, don't break me up now because you have an inefficiency somewhere else in the lineup, right? Like everyone's a team player. Everyone wants the team to do well, but there's a certain comfort level that you get by playing with someone for a long period of time where there's these little cues on the ice, and you almost just start moving and thinking instinctually with your partner. You start changing that up too often. It's such a fine line between winning and losing. It could be one miscue here, one miscue the next game. Next thing you know, you just lost 2 games in a row, and maybe you had no business losing those games. I think players, it's okay to take players out of their comfort zone from time to time. I think that's how you grow as a player. That's how you evolve. But I don't like this whole, it's just going to be a rotating cast of characters.
So, Frank, let me throw this at you, and I haven't yet convinced Blake Price of this, but don't worry, he'll catch up. We've seen this a little bit in the postseason with Tampa, with Toronto. Is the most efficient lineup then 7 defensemen, 11 forwards, because one of the fourth line wingers, unless they're a penalty killer, probably not playing a whole lot to begin with. And then that at least gives you more options where you can set a pair in game and rotate only a few guys as opposed to the entire cast of characters.
For me, it depends on the strengths of that 7-man group. If you have a guy near the bottom of that group, but he's super offensive and he's almost like just a specialist kind of guy, then it makes sense for me, because maybe you find some time for him on a power play unit, maybe not the first unit. But if you had someone to play with Quinn Hughes, you would never think about breaking it up. So the Vegas Golden Knights just won a Stanley Cup with Martinez and Pietrangelo as their top pair. Colorado wins with Makar and Taves. Chicago had all those years of Keith and Seabrook, as you guys know. It's like those are cemented. They're never going to change. And you roll those guys as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, top pairs are still a thing. Like, it is still a thing.
It's still a thing. And Hughes is going to munch a ton of minutes because he's going to play on the power play. And he's going to play a lot at 5-on-5. But someone needs to be riding shotgun, needs to be Batman and Robin, right? Like, someone's got to be there with him. And the 7 defenseman thing, I would say this. You're still going to roll your first and your second as is. The variation a lot of times is going to be on the third pair. And it might just be one of those things where if there's a a preferable face-off assignment for a second pair, maybe you throw that guy I just talked about, that kind of offensive specialist. Like you throw him out there with your guy on your second pair because you have an offensive zone face-off now. So you get him in a little bit that way. I still think it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the varied 3 with your 7 guy in there. Like I just think the top 4 still has to eat the lion's share of the minutes.
Christian Wallana might be that kind of guy for all it's worth. The resumes, the write-ups, and they're not perfect facsimiles of Frankie Corrado, but both McWard and Juleson, who could be options going forward, are guys that are neither stay-at-home defensemen. They're not super offensive defensemen, but they're like yourself, could contribute, could defend. What would have gone through Frank Corrado's mind early in his career with not many NHL games under his belt? What would have gone through your mind? That we're going to start you with Quinn Hughes on opening night versus Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
I would hope that I was just super naive to the situation and not worried about the consequences, about what could go wrong, and just what are the opportunities here of what can go right and what can be of this. But when you start going down that path, I find it takes you out of the moment. And the best way for any player to play and take advantage of a situation is just to stay in the moment. Because if you start looking down the road and you start thinking big picture, that's when, the sort of the process oriented goal gets put on the back burner and it becomes all about the outcome. And I just want the outcome. You feel like you can grab it all the time. Meanwhile, you're forgetting what kind of process gets you there. It's a very exciting feeling. Like my first NHL game, I got to play with Alex Edler. And it was just like one of those things where in my head, I was like, defer to this guy. You know what I mean? Like this guy's been around. I feel very comfortable with him. Let's just, like, he's going to do the lion's share of the work. I'm going to be an auxiliary player for him on the ice. I'm going to try and talk as much as I can. I'm going to try and be open as much as I can. At the end of the day, I want to do right by my D partner because you don't want to leave him high and dry and put him in a bad spot. Like those are the kind of process things that you're thinking about as a young player in those situations. And for these guys, listen, if you're playing with Quinn Hughes, you should get the message pretty quick as far as what's going to happen here. He's going to have the puck a lot. He's transporting it up the ice. He's carrying it up the ice. He's going to be up and down. And so you know what you need to do? You just need to be sound positionally. You need to have a little bit of jam in your own zone to try and break things up and get him involved into the breakout, because that's a big part of his game. That's a big part of, every team now exiting the zone is having a 4-man attack. It's just about executing it. And one game is great. But the thing that really separates the guys like Chris Tanev, for instance, is he did it one game and he kept doing it and he kept getting better at it and he kept getting more comfortable. And it just seemed like nothing really fazed him at times where things could have fazed him. And for young defensemen, that's where you start getting the deer in the headlights look, when things are moving a little too fast. And maybe, the minuses could be piling up and you're not touching the puck as much. You don't feel as involved in the game. How comfortable are you in those situations? And that's where I see the difference between the guys that really carve out a nice career and the guys like myself that play a little bit here and there, and it could have gone better. But hey, you made it to the NHL, and now you get to talk about it for a little.
Were they changing things up there with you with Edler, or was Tanev injured that night?
There was a lot. Remember when I got called up, there was a lot of injuries, and that's what led me to playing in the playoffs, because I had just finished junior. I just got to the Chicago Wolves. We had played 3 games in Chicago, and I got a phone call on my hotel line, which is bizarre because, that's 2013. No one calls on a landline anymore. And I had a cell phone. Like I had an iPhone at the time, and it was Scott Arneal, because I guess he didn't have my number. Think about how bizarre that is. The coach of the American Hockey League team, you're so new, he doesn't yet have your number, but he knows he can find you at the Residence Inn in Rosemont if he calls the front desk and says, can you patch me through to Frankie Corrado's room? Anyways, so I got that call, and then it was like, you were going to go anyways in Black Ace, but they got a ton of injuries, so you're going to play against the Hawks. And then it turned into playing in the playoffs because there was just so many injuries. It wasn't ideal for the team. It was great for me. It was an experience I'll never forget.
Yeah, 4 Stanley Cup playoff games, and with a hell of a Canucks team still then in 2012, 2013. Frankie, Ilya Mikheyev is going to miss the rest of preseason, and he's a coin toss at best for the season opener. Would you be recriminating the way they handled that knee injury last year, letting him play on it so long that now it's affecting this season, at least this preseason, if not into this season as well?
Matthew, as you know, I don't like to rehash old things. I don't like to be the guy that says, I told you so, or give myself a pat on the back. That's not what we're all about here.
Is there a butt coming?
But I said this a long time ago. I said this when they said he played on the torn ACL and it wasn't going to get worse. And then they made him get the surgery, which he had to get anyways. The timing was not going to work out. It is 9. I want to yell this from the top of the Grouse Mountain. It is 9 months, no matter any way you slice it, for an ACL. You are not coming back sooner. Unless you're Aaron Rodgers and you are doing ayahuasca in a cave somewhere in Nevada, it's 9 months for an ACL. Conventional treatment equals conventional timeline. And that's pretty much any way you slice it, that's how it's going to be. So you go back in time, you get the surgery done as quickly as humanly possible, because now your timeline leads you to the start of the year. It's not just about and I've been through this surgery. That's why I can speak to this. I spent 9 months doing this ACL surgery. It's the most grueling 9 months you can go through as an athlete. It's not just about getting yourself back so that you can pass certain strength tests and you can skate pretty fast on the ice for a practice in a game. Reconditioning is the biggest issue. You can do all these tests to get yourself back and you feel pretty good, but the reconditioning is the last part. It's the most important part. And when you try and expedite a timeline, the reconditioning is the part that falls behind on the back burner. So for his sake, I hope he's back. I hope he can stay back, because ultimately that's the most important thing. Anyone can come back. Like, how long can you stay back and make it sustainable? But it should have been dealt with more swiftly, and it should have allowed for more time on the back end for reconditioning. We'll see how it plays out. But as a guy who's been through the ACL surgery, I said it at the time. I don't like the way they did the timeline. And now with him not being on the ice and probably not going to start the season, I don't want to say I told you so. So I'm not even going to say it.
Yeah. And he is on the ice. It's just in a non-contact jersey.
He should play in the AHL first. No, he should get a week in the AHL to get that conditioning up to snuff. I mean, he's an important player, and his speed and his timing is everything, isn't it?
It's funny. The conditioning stint is somewhat underutilized in the NHL. It seems like the conditioning stint has become this way to get someone who's a healthy scratch very often, some games down in the minors, so you don't have to put them on waivers. And it's a 2-week expiration date. So you bring them back up and it kicks the can down the road a little bit until you have an injury or an opening in the lineup. We don't see it that much for like bona fide NHL guys who are full-time NHL guys who come back from a big injury. They just go back in the lineup. And in baseball, they'll use it all the time.
I was going to say that. You get $20 million players down in AAA.
The rehab stint is used left, right, and center in baseball.
Yeah, 100%. And they're not even shy to send you to the Florida Coastal League to play single A ball.
Just reps. Just reps.
Go pitch down there. You know what I was wondering? So when I played for Toronto and I was a healthy scratch a lot, like certain thoughts go through your head. You're like, should I be going to play like some kind of men's league at night and not tell anyone, just to like play a game? You know, it's been so long. And then I was thinking in baseball, they do simulated games for pitchers. Yeah. And I'm like, how would that work for a hockey player? It's just me. It's a sheet of ice. Is there a way you can do a simulated game? I still don't know how
We're laughing at the men's league comment because Blake brought us a story earlier this year.
A CF Montreal player.
CF Montreal soccer player this year who wasn't being played and so just upped and joined a men's league
under a pseudonym.
Under a pseudonym in town.
Well, soccer, you can do it because you just need some cleats and shin pads. Like I was trying to think, how am I going to sneak my gear around unless I just go buy all new gear,
Canadian Tire gear, tip to tail. Yes.
And it's sitting at my condo, stinking the joint out because I gotta play Wednesday nights at Canlin, York. I never did it.
That would be a story.
Lastly, for me, buddy, we are. I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with your ex-teammate Teddy Blueger and some of the work he's doing on the penalty kill. It's only preseason, albeit one of the games was against McDavid and Draisaitl. Boy, nowhere to go but up for this Canucks penalty kill, but I think they may have found someone there who helps in a big way, especially early on here.
I love Teddy's energy. I mean, right from day one when I met him down in Wilkes-Barre, it was his first year in the league. He was one of those guys where we would all put in the work, okay? We all go on the ice for practice. We all do our workouts. Everyone stays out, does a couple things here and there, and then, you get on with your day, okay? I can't tell you how many times I'd be leaving the rink, and a lot of guys would be leaving the rink, and Teddy's just coming off the ice. And his stick blade is covered in snow, and he had all the pucks himself. And it's like he stayed out for an extra hour to do stuff. Like, that's how much this guy loves being a hockey player. He loves being a professional hockey player and how committed he is to getting better. And that was him as a rookie. His energy is kind of like, it's infectious on the ice because he's always moving his feet. He's always getting involved in the play. He's not shy that way. And he's the kind of guy you look for on a penalty kill, right? Like, I call it the World Junior penalty kill, where it's like you dump the puck down the ice and you go apply pressure and you try and like squeeze the puck against the boards and kill 10 seconds that way. And the crowd kind of gives you a little pop and you head back to the bench with your head buried like, that was such a hard shift. Ooh, and then the next guy comes over and he does it. Like, I feel like Teddy's the ringleader for that kind of stuff. And Matt, like you said, the penalty kill needs a lot of work. There's a guy who, is probably going to be first guy over the boards when McDavid's unit is coming on the ice or the Pens are in town and Crosby's unit is cut. Like, that's the kind of guy that I think provides that energy, that spark on the penalty kill, not afraid to block a shot. And like these college guys, they have bad habits when it comes to blocking shots. And I mean that in a good way because they wore cages for 4 years in college and they'll just dive in front of it. Because they didn't grow up with the vibe. Like, he's been a pro for a long time now, obviously. But it's just like, it's just like the college guys, man. They'll lay right out because they had the cage for 4 years, and Teddy's one of those guys. He's awesome. And I hope it goes well for him here because I actually think there might be a little more offense than meets the eye because I've seen it in the AHL, but we'll see if it can happen at the NHL level.
And fair as it may be, he's got to make an instant impact there because Edmonton for your first 2 games, then through Florida, and of course we know how they can score in Tampa with Stamkos and that crew. So you're facing some pretty good power plays early on in the season, and you just can't afford the here we go again on the penalty kill for a 3rd straight year. Frankie, we're fresh out of time. Thank you for yours. Catch up next week, and it'll be opening night for the Canucks and Oilers next time we talk.
Love it. See you guys.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale.